Hello, and welcome back to day 3 of 31 days of NaNoWriMo prep. So far we've learned what NaNoWriMo is, and we've decided what stories we're going to be writing in November. Well, hopefully you figured it out. If you haven't watched the previous 2 videos in this series, then I will link to them in the cards right up there and also in the description below. I will also link to the corresponding blog posts in the description below as well. So if you're more of a visual learner than an auditory one, you can go check out the blog posts. So now it's time to start working on the specifics of your novel. I know that in the last video I said that you don't have to work on a novel this November, and that's still true. However, for the sake of clarity, and because I assume that most people participating in NaNoWriMo are actually writing full-fledged novels, I'm going to be using the term novel from now on. That being said, let's get started on today's topic. So to me, one of the most important things to figure out, and one of the first things you should figure out, is what age group your target audience is. Because believe it or not, that can change a lot about how you ultimately tell your story. Now, whether you work your novel around your target audience or your target audience around your novel is up to you. Some people are hell-bent on writing young adult fiction, while some people are hell-bent on telling their story the way they want to, and then their target audience is based on the final product. Either way, it'll be helpful to know the general rules and guidelines to writing for each age group, no matter how you decide to go about picking your target audience. Knowing your target audience is important because that's how you market your book to potential readers. And if you market it wrong, that's a big mess you're not going to want to deal with. The first thing you should know is what your options are when it comes to target audiences and age groups. There's children's fiction, middle grade fiction, young adult fiction, new adult fiction, and adult fiction. This video is going to strictly focus on explaining what middle grade and young adult are and what the differences are between them. I'm not going to get into children's fiction at all because that's a completely different territory that I'm not really familiar with. So let's start with what middle grade fiction is. When discussing each category, we'll be going over a few things. The age group it encompasses, the general age of the protagonist, maturity level of the content, and word count. Middle grade fiction is generally targeted toward readers ages 8 to 12, though technically the category could be split into 2 separate categories, middle grade and upper middle grade. There's no hard line between these 2 categories, but I think it's safe to assume that middle grade is for ages 8 to 10 and upper middle grade is for ages 10 to 12. Even then, readers ages 10 to 12 could easily enjoy middle grade novels and vice versa. Plus, readers 12 and up could also enjoy middle grade. Ever heard of the Percy Jackson series? Lots of older readers love those, even some adults. In general, middle grade protagonists tend to fall between the ages of 9 to 13 years old. A good thing to keep in mind when deciding on the age of your protagonist, and this pertains to middle grade through new adult, not just middle grade, is that young readers tend to like to read about protagonists older than themselves. This is what I like to call the Ariel effect. If you've seen the Disney movie The Little Mermaid, then you probably remember a point in your childhood where you thought she was totally right. Obviously, her dad was crazy, keeping her from her true love. But then there came a point in your life where things changed, and suddenly you found yourself on her father's side. But Daddy, I love him! Girl, you haven't even said 2 words to the guy. This is the same with protagonists. Young readers tend to trust the actions of older protagonists, which makes the story more enjoyable for them to read, whereas younger protagonists will most likely bother them because their choices will seem immature. However, even if you choose to write about a protagonist on the older end of the spectrum, there's still a certain maturity level that you need to be aware of. For middle grade, you should try to keep the content of your novel G or PG rated, no higher. Censorship! I'm sure you shout, but hear me out. This isn't a case of saying that you can't write about certain things because they're inherently bad. But with middle grade especially, there's just a line that you can't cross. At that age, parents are most likely screening the books their children are reading and filtering out anything that covers topics they consider too mature for their child. Of course, upper middle grade novels can cover some heavier topics than regular middle grade, but even then, those topics can't be as heavy or covered as graphically as they could be in a young adult novel. Lengthwise, middle grade novels should range between 20,000 to 55,000 words, with word count increasing as target audience line's age increases. Although I think it's fair to point out that word counts in middle grade have been going up lately, especially thanks to series like Harry Potter, which have proved kids can read and comprehend longer books than people had previously thought. Fantasy and sci-fi middle grade novels are probably the only genres that can justify going past 70,000 words though. And you'd better have a captivating story in order to hold a 10-year-old's attention for that long. So what's the difference between middle grade and young adult? Well, for starters, young adult is intended for readers aged 13 to 18. Just like middle grade though, both older and younger readers can and do enjoy young adult novels. Twilight, Hunger Games, Divergent, just to name a few. Protagonist-wise, 14 to 19 years old is a good range, though I'd err on the higher end of the spectrum in order to appeal to a larger audience. The Ariel effect applies here too, just like I mentioned earlier. However, if you were to make your protagonist 14 or 15 and you kept the maturity level of your book in the PG range, you could probably appeal to some upper middle grade readers as well. Really, the line between age groups is pliable. Speaking of maturity level, you should probably shoot for PG to PG-13 rated content. If you make your content G-rated, odds are your readers will quickly become bored. They're mostly going to be angsty teenagers, remember, so a clean, happy-go-lucky story without any grit to it probably won't appeal to them at all. On the other hand, if you make the content too mature, they probably won't have a way to get their hands on your book. Most teens are living off of their parents' cash, which means their parents have the final say in what books their kids buy with their cash, and there's no way a school library is going to stock some teen erotica on their shelves. Honestly, I don't even know if it's legal to publish teen erotica. And when it comes to word count, 55,000 to 80,000 is a good range for most genres. 47,000 and up can work for some contemporaries, but it isn't really recommended that you drop below that, and 80,000 and up is only recommended for genres like fantasy or sci-fi. Even then though, try not to go too far above 100,000, especially if this is the first novel in a series. You've got to keep in mind that young adult readers are in school with homework, extracurriculars, and social lives. Probably. That means they won't have as much time as most adults to sit down and read a gigantic book. So that's all I've got for you today. Come back tomorrow for the conclusion of this two-parter where we'll be discussing the differences between young adult, new adult, and adult fiction. If you guys like this video, make sure to hit the like button below, also subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you're notified every time I post a new video. Also, feel free to follow me on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr. All of the links are in the description below. You should also make sure to check out my personal blog, readwritelovefiction.com. Not only do I post the corresponding blog posts to these videos on there, but I also talk about my writing journey, including decisions that I'm making and just things I'm stumbling upon as I'm writing my series. If you find any of that interesting at all, go check it out. Also, I highly recommend you check out my official author website because that is the first place I'm going to be posting any updates on my series. I'm going to be posting there before I post here or on any other form of social media. All that said and done, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!